Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have a really great pleasure to welcome you to this highly interesting and interactive breakout session around topic on how has COVID-19 affected production and consumption patterns, what are the new market trends shaping the agri-food sector, and what innovative solutions is the industry adopting to improve its sustainability and resilience. I am sure that you have followed the conference from the morning, and it is once again another focus, another, let's say, way of looking at and finding solutions to these highly interesting and important questions. I am Mari-Liisa Möris, EAT Food Director for Northeast. And I actually am not going to be on my own because I have a really distinguished and fantastic expert panel, which I have a pleasure to introduce to you now. And first panel member is Klaus Grunert, Professor of Marketing, Aarhus University, and founder and director of the MAP Research Center. Welcome, Klaus. Then next panel member is Julia Patorska, partner associate from Deloitte. She's also economist, so she's certainly bringing in here a lot of important point of view on the economy. And then welcome, Julia, as well. Warmly welcome as well. Then we have Begoña Perez Villarreal, Director of EAT Food CLC South. And welcome, Begoña. Nice to have you with us as well. And then finally, we have Mr. Gonzalo Campos, Fish and Convenience Meals Marketing Manager, EMEA, from Sealed Air. Welcome, Gonzalo. Really lovely to have you as well with us.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we are going to go a little bit on the topic, I would like to also remind you, audience, that you have a chance to ask questions through the chat, as you probably have seen in the previous session. So whenever you have really burning questions, don't hesitate to put them on writing and ask them from our panelists. So then we go to the topic of the day. And as you could probably see, maybe you have received the information that EAT Food has published the results on impact of COVID-19 pandemic on European food and consumer behaviors. And this study is really interesting because it is really focusing on the consumer side and revealing really interesting results. So Klaus Grunert from Aarhus University was leading the study together with EAT Food partners from Queen's University Belfast, University of Helsinki, University of Leuven, University of Warsaw, VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, and with the Spanish National Research Council, CSCI. So I'm really sure that you are all eager to hear about the results. So without any further discussions, Klaus, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria-Lisa. I would like to use a few minutes to talk about the results of the study here about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on consumer food behavior. Do you have the next slide, please? The pandemic is something that has had a strong impact on all our lives. It has been a disruptive event. It has had an effect on the way we live at home, on the way we work, on a lot of aspects of our daily life. And therefore, it, of course, also has had an impact on the food sector. It has had a direct impact on actors in the food supply chain. We will hear more about that later. And it has had an impact on the way consumers relate to food. And I will show you a few results on that. The other question that is interesting here is, what about when the pandemic at some point is over? The changes that we can see now with regard to consumer behavior, will they persist? Will it have a permanent impact on the way people relate to food, or will it subside again once we are over the pandemic? Next slide, please. So the study I'm talking about here is a study I have done together with a number of partners that Maria-Lisa already has mentioned. And the core of the study has been a survey of 5,000 consumers in 10 European countries. And the data collection has been the second half September. That means at a point in time where the pandemic was about half a year old. So if it had any impact on the way people behave with regard to food and cooking and eating at this time, it should have been visible. Next, please. And the effects that we are interested in, or the changes in consumer behavior that we are interested in, were changes along the meal preparation chain. That means we were interested in, has it had impacts on the way people shop, impacts on the kind of products that people buy, or on the criteria that people use in selecting those products? Has it had impacts on the way people cook and prepare meals? And of course, has it had impacts on the way people eat, their meal patterns and that type of thing? Next, please. So we start with the shopping. And what you see on the right, the small print is maybe a little bit difficult to see, but what we see here is how people in their own perception have changed behaviors across a range of factors. And the green bars are those that have been doing more of something, and the red bars are those that have been doing less of something. And then there's a third group which has not changed their behavior. And what we can already see here is we usually have people changing in both directions. People doing more of something and also people doing less of the same thing. What we are most interested in here, of course, is where we have tendencies where clearly people have been more doing of something than those that have been doing less of the same thing. So that is the way in which we will interpret the main results of the study here. And we start here with those changes that we can see with regard to shopping behaviors. And some of the results we can see here are not so surprising. We find, first of all, that people have been buying more food online and have been engaging more in in-home delivery. We also found that people have been doing more big shopping trips where they buy a lot of things rather than a lot of small shopping trips. What maybe was less obvious was a tendency we find is that people seem to engage in more deliberation in their shopping. We always say that food shopping, food choice is habit-based, is many times low involvement choices. It seems that we have a development here where people do less impulse purchases, people engage more in planning their food purchases, and people check more of the information that is on the package and check the prices when they do their food shopping. Next, please. We've been looking at, can I have the next slide, please? We've been looking, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. We've been looking at how consumption of different types of products has changed. We find across a whole range of product categories that people say their consumption has been increasing. That has partly to do with that people have been spending more time at home. It can also have something to do with that the role of meals in the household and in the family has achieved a bigger role, as I will come back to in a minute. But we can also see that the increases have been different across different product categories. The two product categories where we have seen most increases on the top of the chart here are fruits and vegetables, which we normally take as an indicator of a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet. The next two on the list here, on the other hand, are crisps and chocolate sweets, which are more indulgent types of products. We also find that we have an increase in flour, indicating that people do more baking most likely. And we should also note that we have two product categories here where we have a pretty much balanced result here in terms of people doing more and people doing less, with a slight overweight of people doing less. That goes for convenience products, where many people say they've been using less of those. And it goes for the consumption of alcoholic beverages, where some have been using more, but also a lot have been using less during the pandemic. Next slide, please. When we look at the criteria that people say they have been looking more or less at when making food choices, it mirrors the results that we've been seeing with regard to the shopping behavior, where I said that one of the major results was an increase in the deliberation with regard to food choices. That is what we also see here, where people say that there has been more emphasis on buying local products. There has been more emphasis on looking at the type of packaging, both from sustainability and from hygienic considerations. There has been more emphasis on looking at the presence of artificial additives and ingredients, all of which mirror a general theme about health and sustainability. But also here we have, again, the indulgence aspect with people indulging themselves more by buying tasty treats and delicacies. Next, please. When we look at the way in which people cook and eat, the major result here is that people, and that is independent of which direction their changes in behavior they take, that people take more time in the kitchen and more time in cooking. They enjoy the time cooking more. They are more experimenting with new recipes, and they do more meals together with their family. So we could say that we have a tendency here that people are discovering the joys of eating joint meals in the family and the joys of preparing food on their own in the kitchen. Next slide, please. So we have three major sets of results here. We have the change towards more deliberate, conscious food choices, driven by desire to get value for money and have an enjoyable, healthy, and sustainable diet. At the same time, as I said, we also have a smaller group engaging in more indulgence, more snacking, and more convenience. And for both of these groups, we have a tendency towards more home cooking, more time and creativity in the kitchen, and more family meals. Of course, not everybody is affected in the same way. You find that those consumers that are more affected by the pandemic, may it be in terms of emotional stress or in terms of financial implications, also have a higher likelihood to change their behavior. We find that younger people are more likely to change their behavior than older people. And we also find some geographical differences where the countries that we have investigated that are in the northeast, Finland, Sweden, UK, Germany, and France, doing less changes than those in the southeast, which are Poland, Italy, Greece, Spain, and Romania. So you have a northwest versus southeast divide, and it can, of course, partly be related to how much they have been affected by the pandemic. Next slide, please. So we have these changes here, and to which extent these changes persist depends, of course, partly on consumers. We have asked them what they think themselves. They say mostly that especially the changes towards more deliberation, healthy and sustainable diet are likely to last, but it will also depend on how the rest of the food sector reacts. If the food sector engages in initiatives that can strengthen this trend towards more healthy and sustainable choices, and the factors decisive here are those that already have been discussed also yesterday in the conference. Innovative products in terms of innovative product services and supply chains that correspond to the interest in healthy and sustainable alternatives on the one hand, and the information being made available that enables consumers to actually identify the healthy and sustainable choices on the other hand. To that extent, the whole food sector works together here. Then I think, next slide, please, that these changes that we can see here will actually contribute to the green transition towards a more healthy and sustainable food sector. That was my brief review of the results here. Thanks for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Klaus, for really interesting results. And if I may ask you just a little bit follow-up question here, is that is the impact of COVID on consumer patterns facilitating or hampering the transition to a more sustainable, healthier food system? I mean, you touched based it obviously in the results, but could you maybe, based first of all on your experience, even in the consumer behaviors studies that you do, but also on this study, how do you see this impacting? Let's say, is it going to hamper the transition for more sustainable and healthier food system? Or is that only visual thinking? Yes.
Yeah, I think it will help. I think what we're seeing is that those trends that were already ongoing before the pandemic, a strong interest in health, a strong interest in sustainability, they have been reinforced because of the pandemic, because of a focus on health, but also by more interest in sustainability-related issues in the food area. And there is a chance that these changes will persist also after the pandemic, and in this way contribute to the green transition.
And as you have often said, that consumer behavior is sometimes really difficult to predict and also to change. How do you see food sector and food industry sector, especially, that how in your mind they should, let's say, approach and use this opportunity to let's say, maintain this good progress?
Yeah, I think it's very important that the food sector engages in innovative activities, as they are already doing, but maybe even more with regard to creating healthier and more sustainable alternatives. But it's very important that they do this based on a solid understanding of consumers, on the type of products that they are interested in, the aspects of healthiness and sustainability that they're interested in, the trade-offs that people perceive between health, sustainability, taste, convenience, other issues. I think solid consumer understanding is a base for innovation also in the future in the green transition.
Well, thank you very much, Klaus. Really interesting. I'm sure that, well, anyway, we will continue to discuss about this one and have maybe other point of views. And so I'm actually now turning to Julia and Begonia. And just to remind you that Julia and Begonia have been both involved in what is called a food foresight study that we launched only maybe a month ago. And first of them, or one of them, is actually focusing on CEE countries and really looking at how the central and let's say eastern part of Europe is impacting from COVID-19, but also drawing and designing the opportunities that this crisis can have. And then Begonia has been also like looking at it from the South European, let's say South of European point of view, and with a little bit more on the focus as well on industry side. So I would turn first to, you can obviously reply to this question, both of you, but what challenges and opportunities is COVID-19 offering for the industry and for the innovation, especially to make the transition to a more sustainable food system? Now, based on your experience and your expertise.
Okay,
maybe
so
Julia, yes, please start.
Yeah, so maybe I will start. Thank you. Well, thank you, Klaus, for your presentation. Also, I think it was also inspiring as we've been working on this topic for the past several months also, but not that much into details, looking into consumer behavior. But in fact, when we are talking about the response of agri-food to pandemic, the key word, I think, that has been brought up over again is still resilience. The agri-food sector has been relatively more resilient than other sectors in terms of both demand and supply. From the demand side, we see that turnover in retail food sales actually increased in March 2020, year over year in Central and Eastern Europe, and has since remained relatively stable at around 97 or 99% of last year levels, which I think when we look at the whole economy is a still very good outcome. And retail sale and wholesale trade of non-food products in the meantime was more significantly affected, especially during the first lockdown months. From the supply side, on the other side, manufacture of food and beverage has been by far the most stable output at its lowest point in April 2020. Manufacture of food was at level of 87% year over year, while manufacturing of capital goods and durable consumer goods were producing output at levels of around 50, maybe 60 year over year. So the difference is again quite significant. This relative resiliency makes sense because people, of course, can put off other purchases, but they have to eat anyway. And that's visible in the data and the details you can have in our report to read. So the problem, in fact, for the agri-food industry has not been the level of demand, but rather the changing demand structure and the necessity of the sector to respond to that change during the pandemic. And this is exactly what was Klaus talking about. And what's important to highlight from our analysis is that this is true for all parts of agri-food value chain. For example, farmers reacted by selling food directly to consumers. Manufacturers had to adapt to new health standards and shorter than their supply chains because of trade distortions. Also, retailers had to bump up their online ordering capabilities and digital platforms. So in fact, what we were trying to look during the analysis is not only to the challenges, but also the opportunities that COVID-19 is bringing. And what we were trying to highlight in the report is that some of those challenges and problems, obviously disruptors, that I have mentioned earlier, were actually also the opportunities for the agri-food industry to innovate and to adapt quicker than they would adapt without such a distortion, without the pandemic, in fact. So this presents the potential to build back better. The pandemic has accelerated those trends that were already developing in the industry, and this is mostly related to the digitalization or growing consumer awareness. The opportunity for further digitalization are possible for not only retailers, but also manufacturers and farmers, of course. Due to the pandemic, we have seen both the rise of online ordering and home delivery, but also the increased need for digitalization within the operational process of agri-food firms. And the second trend that I have mentioned is mostly based on, first of all, favoring local foods and also paying more attention to the nutritional value of food. And I also think that the pandemic has made us all more aware of how health is connected to our environment and our planet, and how, as consumers, we have to we have the responsibility to make smart choices. So the idea of the increased importance of sustainability is also a key opportunity for the agri-food industry. So maybe I will pass my votes to Begonia, and I'm really wondering what's her opinion with regards to another analysis that was delivered also.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, indeed. Let's hear Begonia, and then we can kind of go around a little bit these questions still. And please, Begonia.
Although there are a lot of commonalities, one thing, just to complement what Julia has mentioned, is that the main influence in the sector has been, and still is, the decline in out-of-home consumption. And this has hit very strongly the service, the HoReCa sector, that is extremely important, especially in Southern Europe, in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, because between 15-30% of the total food consumption is in food service in Southern Europe. So that change in one area of the food chain has led to implication across the whole industry, because in production, for example, we know that quite a lot of premium products goes for restaurants. Then in the processing companies, out of home products usually make up a relevant part of the brand revenue. And of course, the distribution part of the food system has been as well very much distorted, because the direct-to-consumer initiatives have enormously growth. It was, some months ago, it was even 30%. I imagine now it's even bigger. But still, the complexity of these direct-to-consumer initiatives and the high prices are fighting for profitability for the sector. So for me, this is a very, very strong hit on the industry part. But when you mentioned, Maria Elisa, that the innovation or how the sector thought about innovation in these strange times, and it was really we had interviews with more than 20 representatives of the food sector in the different countries, and it was nearly a common sentence said by all of them, and I like very much one especially that was mentioned by one colleague from Portugal, and she said that, for example, this is the best moment for innovation because there is a sense of urgency and a lack of resources, and we are out of our comfort zone. And it's true that when we ask the companies, they all said nearly that their strategic plans were completely moved away, and they are really having an insightful look at them for adapting to what they need to do. For a bit going into which are the factors that really will have more relevant impact as well. I'm talking about the behavior of consumers and so on. So we know that remote working is still going to be a trend for much more longer time than the pandemic, and that will lead to more meals at home. And that will lead as well to more home cooking as an alternative to restaurants, and due to the impact of the crisis too. So for what we were seeing in Southern Europe is that we are going to have a quite market division in two sectors of consumers. One that are, as a consequence of the economic crisis, one that will be looking for low price driven, because in the countries in South Europe, 35% of the consumer have lost part of all their income during some months, and that will mark quite a lot of one sector. And on the other sector, we will have this quality gourmet indulgence-driven consumer, for the consumer that doesn't have any economic issues and that will spend more money in the shopping basket. And for these ones, of course, more health-related nutrition with new dimensions, vitamins, immunity, etc., will be as well a key trend.
Thank you, Begoña. Maybe just further thoughts on that one is that how do you think that the industry should now react, and how they should be supported in this journey of innovation, and to be fast innovators, basically, to overcome the situation. And maybe also a question for Julia in terms of how this economic side can be maybe recovered, obviously through innovation, but do you have any views there that or channels that should be particularly accelerated or brought to help for the industry? Julia, I think we cannot hear you, so
yes, I was unmuted.
Yeah, that's
sorry,
fine, no problem.
Yes, sorry for that. Yeah, I think that a key over here is that policy changes, both those containment measures and support schemes that we see all over the Europe in all of the countries, but also coming from the European Union, have to be set in balance between a need for protection, stability, and the need for sustainable recovery. What I mean is that the major policy changes meant to prevent the pandemic or negate its impact have to be backed by the comprehensive economic impact assessment, by understanding, in fact, what would be the impact of those measures or this support. And only through evidence-based policy we are going to be able to successfully combat the virus and also support the sector, not only agri-food industry, but in fact any sector of the economy at the same time. So in regards to non-pandemic policies, I think support for regional development and growth of the sector in Central Eastern Europe is critical, and it was visible during our analysis. What I mean by this is further improvement in transport infrastructure and general support to SMEs, as in Central and Eastern Europe, many of those companies that are operating in agri-food sector are still SMEs, and therefore their resilience to any disturbances are much lower than the big companies have. From a policy standpoint, I think what is also necessary is support in branding and promoting local products in order to utilize the changing consumer preferences. At the same time, at the European level, it is of course important to note that the European Green Deal is coming, and we can all benefit out of it. The funding available to the agri-food industry under the European Green Deal can enable producers to more quickly adapt to the more sustainable and more regionalized supply chains, and also more sustainable method of production. So definitely what Begonia said, innovation over here is also a key, and innovation happens when there is a strong need for a change, when there is a problem. And the pandemic obviously has brought many problems for us, so it will be visible how also it is changing in a good way, in fact, I think.
Yeah. Begonia, any comment on that? Or
well, very brief comment, because I would like to hear as well.
Absolutely, we will go.
But only I would say, instead of what they should keep doing, that the industry knows very well, what industry should get rid of, that I think is quite interesting. That for me is everything that is not key to the business, everything that creates unsafe feeling for stakeholders, for consumers, all products that are unhealthy and sustainable, or less sustainable, that they can do, and the thing that they should do is to be agile and act very fast. Of course, invest in digital capability, in food security, in create new consumer experiences, I would think so.
Well, thank you, Begoña. Indeed, Gonzalo, you are here obviously to really represent the industry point of view, and with your let's say on a daily work as a marketing manager EMEA for fish and convenience meals of Sealed Air is certainly giving you a front row for understanding actually what the industry needs. And my question, first of all, is that do you agree with the analysis made by other panelists that you've been hearing? And what is the experience in your company, Sealed Air?
Thank you very much, Maria Luisa, and very much agree with Klaus, with Julia and Begoña so far. And basically, starting from our own company in Sealed Air, right? After we faced this unprecedented situation, definitely the strategies were improved, and we have a 4P strategy where everything was about a world-class performance, because we have to keep the supply chain going, right? As the food supply chain was declared essential, society needed to nourish and be healthy more than ever, right? So we needed to keep the supply chain going and delivering all these valuable materials in order to preserve food and protect it from the challenges in the supply chain. So second thing was important people, zero harm, continuity the business, reassurance that everybody was protected in order to perform its best. The third was our products, our commitment to innovation, our responsibility to bring more sustainable solutions into the market, because that never went away. Right. So, and last and not least, the process, the completely operational efficiency to secure our supply chain to be ready for peaks, during the first wave, as Klaus mentioned, and Julia, it was amazing the demand of in the supply chains in order to keep all factories, not only one sector, multiple sectors demanding for health and wellness. And therefore the packaging in order to reassure this for retail supply chain. So I fully agreed on the trends out of that many consumers were going and doing their purchase, and they wanted something more agile, they wanted more volume. So the ones that decided to go for fresher options, they were buying family packs or more weight, from 200, 300 grams to 650 grams perhaps. And frozen was Boost. Amazingly, it has become, if it was a staple, now it's a completely a staple and a ally for the households right now. So I think that the supply chain was extremely resilient. So I do fully agree with that on Julia. And one remark that I'd like to make is that fish, everybody was looking to protect their health, and actually fish was really, really well appreciated by society.
Yeah, thank you, Gonzalo. I can really relate to what you are saying there. If we see a little bit that obviously this all relates to also this transformation that basically we are all in, and of course the industry as well. And Begoña was mentioning that the strategies of a lot of industrial companies are kind of like put on the table again, and to review that what needs to be done. So how do you see the opportunities for the transformation of the food system and now to accelerate? Do you see that this will have impact? I mean, if you really look at it from your point of view, and also like maybe your industry in general, but also for your company.
I do see it. I mean, basically, again, starting from our own company, even before this unprecedented scenario, our vision is, we're in business to protect and solve the most critical, challenging packaging challenges that there are, and leave the world better than we found it. And our customers, what they were doing before, they were already migrating, switching into a more sustainable design for recycling solutions that they were doing it already. But now everything is being accelerated in a way across Europe. So more and more we receive the request of doing this switch into using our structures that have at the very least 30% post-consumer recycled content in order to deliver a food product that is not only of a high quality and of a sustainable origin, but also being packed in our design for recycling structure. So I think that the industry is really accelerating that in a way. Innovation, maybe during the first months of the first wave, there was no innovation because how could there be innovation when nobody really knew what was going to happen, right? So, but then right after June, innovation started to hit big time in the market, and I heard from the speakers that they talk about indulgence, right? So during the first months of the first wave, indulgence was very there because obviously bars were closed, restaurants were closed, and then everybody was trying to give themselves that. So I do consider that innovation because some companies were still launching very innovative products in the market. Yes, they were purchased perhaps for a different reason, but that has continued. Now we have seen in the last months different innovative products entering the European shelves, as well as collaboration in the recycling process. We can give an example about that.
Yeah, excellent. I think those are really important areas that you just mentioned, and probably there is going to be a big, as there is already a big boost on the innovation now that we are on the second wave, and depending, of course, a little bit how the year will start, it is probably going to have even a stronger impact there. Begoña and Julia and Klaus as well. Do you have anything to add here when you are listening to Gonzalo and to kind of see that? Because we are talking about this whole ecosystem, right? And we cannot only look at the industry, neither that, they need to kind of take care of the innovation on their own. How do you see this, let's say, how the whole ecosystem could now, let's say, help on this innovation, acceleration to the innovation and kind of make it permanent? In this sustainability and resilience, I mean, of course. Begoña, we cannot hear you yet, so probably you will be on.
Now, one thing that I wanted as well to add, because we have all been talking about the resilience of the sector, but as well, we have seen mindset changes in our sector, and the mindset has been even the adaptation capability that has been really very high, but as not only that, but as well the collaboration, the level of cooperation and collaboration between different organizations, in the food sector. I think that has been reinforced very much. For example, producers and retailers, they had to reinforce their relationship because during the chaotic moments of the lockdown, they have to change completely the way they were in relation. And they have mentioned that they have really learned to know each other a bit even more. So this kind of mindset changes have, I think, helped quite a lot into the sector. And going back as well about the innovation or how it can affect the ecosystem, for me and for South Europe, it's clear that the HoReCa is the sector with the greatest need for innovation, and they are the ones seeing the biggest changes and impact, and how that is influencing the whole system. When we were looking, for example, for consumer goods producers, they were saying that more than 90% of them, they were looking for new innovations. Talent as well is much more available now due to the remote work, so there are more opportunities there. And in general, what the feeling is that perhaps they will be less in number innovation, but more relevant innovation.
Thank you, Begoña. Yes, Gonzalo, please go ahead. React. Yes, no.
Yes,
Please.
because thank you. Begoña said something very important, that new moments of consumption are needed. And if we remember the visual that Klaus showed and the elaboration of Julia, right? Yes, consumers are indulging more, they're consuming more at home as well, they're cooking more at home, but at the same time, we're all still working at home as well, right? So there's going to be a time that we want to be treated, not always cooking, right? Because yes, maybe we'll enjoy cooking, but not necessarily everybody has the skills to do so. So that's where convenience products will have a return. And if these convenience products come back with a very important wellness, great recipes, great fitting new moments of consumption, I think that this will be very well appreciated by society as well. So, and obviously, if they are combined in a more functional, with more opportunities to do it with, let's say the packaging offering me an opportunity to do oven, to do grill, to do microwave, to do more things which are more uses that I'm giving to this utensil, right? Therefore, this could be also a convenience for the consumer, while the packaging remains being more sustainable as well. So I think that they combine many different things could help the industry bring new products into the market that could fit the right scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely.
Local products, no?
Yeah,
local products.
Yes. Yeah. Klaus, you in one of the results that you had was indeed that there was, I think, 87% of the people who are kind of like thinking of continuing to having this kind of a more healthy eating, let's say, approach. And, after the COVID, they hope that they will be able to continue, or they want to continue. So do you see any kind of, let's say, maybe a trick or a important insight that that, let's say, the industry can at the same time also influence, or at least nudge, as we nowadays call it, consumers to kind of continue in this very good direction?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic is a disruptive situation, as we have said, and disruption is always good for innovation, because it breaks habits, because normal habits don't work anymore in the current situation. And then, of course, we have a phase where new habits consolidate once we get over the pandemic and we have some kind of normal life. How exactly that will look like, of course, we don't know. But it's clear, for example, if we take the working at home thing, that we most likely will have a situation where working at home will become more common. We will have less traveling. We will have more meetings like this one here. And it will have an impact on cooking, and it will have an impact on on meal patterns. And it will create new consumer needs, and it will create new opportunities also in terms of innovation and new product development. And what Gonzalez said, I think, is very relevant, because if people rediscover the joy of eating at home and have more family meals, they will also have a need for products that support it. Not everybody is a gourmet cook, but you can still enjoy being in the kitchen and doing meals if you have the right products, where the convenience is not just a cheap substitute for a real meal, but the convenience is an input to creating your own family meal that you enjoy. It's also, this is a trend that actually was already visible before the pandemic, but it will be accelerated because of the pandemic, and the industry can take advantage of it. And I think there will be many opportunities like this. And of course, it's a coincidence, but the fact that the Founder Fox strategy with the impact on green innovation starts now in the middle of the pandemic actually is a really lucky coincidence.
Indeed.
That at a time where there's a need for innovation and adapting to new consumer needs, we also are getting a lot of tools that actually will promote exactly this transition.
Yeah, I think that we all agree that this is really a fantastic, I mean, really fantastic if we can use this word on this kind of like really disruptive times as well, but for the innovation and to kind of accelerate really the direction where we want to go. Any further remarks, or shall we start maybe taking the questions from the audience? And just to remind you as well that obviously you can download from EAT Food website, the information and also the studies and the results. So please do visit our website to do so. So maybe we will. Yes, Gonzalo. Yes, please.
May I thank you. The great opportunity that the aquaculture industry in Europe will have, and the new role that they will play. I mean, it's just a fantastic opportunity because everybody now more than ever understood the need of health, wellness, and supply chains will be completely improved. Major players, they will try to take position closer to the raw material in order to bring trust and transparency in the supply chain, to make them faster, to make them more secure, more consistent. And therefore, this is all in the benefit of a society to nourish it better, right? So now to improve yield, to protect these fresh materials and to bring them faster to the supply chain. So logistics is going to play a very critical role, and I see that the move into a more convenient pre-packed product is coming. It was already here, but now it's because everybody realized what Klaus just said, I need to eat well. I may not have the skills, but if the ingredient is of high quality and is ready for me and is in a material that is already sustainable to be collected in a circuit later, okay, fantastic. I got all what I need in order to nourish my home, my family, society. So I see that the aquaculture is going to be a big winner here.
Indeed. Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you for that. So I see there's already a first question, and really many thanks for all your insights, because this is really disruptive, but at the same time great opportunities, and we simply need to catch those and go really fast ahead for the new innovation. I see there's a first question from Martina Baher, Global Sustainability Department of ING Banks. Do you see a potential of shifting to more plant-based diets across the EU? It can be reasoned that consumers are being more aware as this, and few previous pandemic were caused precisely by meat consumption and production. So is there anyone who would like to answer particularly to this one? So can we see a shift to more plant-based diets across the EU? And was there anything in there, Klaus, that was indicating in the study, or when we talk about this healthy side? Probably we were not measuring exactly this question, but any comments on this?
The data shows, as I already said, it showed an increase in the consumption of fruits and vegetables. If you look at the numbers for meat, there is no clear tendency. There is about equally many, both increasing or decreasing or not changing their meat consumption. And in a way, I think this probably mirrors very much the situation where we are or where we were before the pandemic with regard to meat substitution. There is increasing awareness of the issue. But there is also a lot of uncertainty about if you want to change your behavior and which way it should go, with not everybody perceiving the alternatives as attractive enough. There's another area where I think innovation is really important, and where one could change the current readiness for doing new things also at the consumer and household level, to apply that also to the use of alternative proteins.
Yeah, and obviously I would, add to that one that when we obviously talk about alternative proteins, and I think there was a very good discussion also this morning, that it is still a kind of a definition as well, that what do we mean with alternative proteins? What does it mean for the consumers? And how it is then kind of a explained, and what are the technologies behind it? I think there's a lot of questions there from the consumer side, especially that if the consumer behavior wants to be changed in that area, it also would require to better understand what is it that we are actually really talking about. And it is a very wide question on the alternative proteins as well. Anyone else? Any comment maybe on this side? It's a little bit tricky question maybe to put on this concept, but then let's see. There's one question on the packaging.
Maybe just one
yes,
thing.
Please.
What just comes into my mind is that since we have right now a little bit more time, and we are, well, sitting at home and spending this time at home, and usually these vegetable meals need more preparation and more time to prepare it. So I think it may be another trigger, apart from awareness, to increase the level of vegetable meals being consumed instead of meat meals. Of course, there is another huge topic around it with regards to the climate neutrality and everything that goes with this topic and meat consumption. But I think those little pieces may in the future have much bigger influence with regards to the consumption of meat.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Julia. There's another question that is touch basing a little bit the question on the packaging, but more from the food safety side. And Gonzalo, you also mentioned earlier that when we talk about convenience food, it's also like the question of the kind of a convenience packaging, in a way that, how it actually kind of finds its way from the retailer's shelf to the plate of the consumer in a safe way, in a way that we can guarantee, of course, the food safety. And so how do you see this development, and from industry side?
I thank you for the question. I believe that there's going to be a great move from unpack to pack proteins, pack food in general, because of not only the convenience, but because of the importance to decrease food waste. Okay, this is extremely important for society, and it's one of the top of minds for retailers, right, across Europe. The food waste reduction opportunities of packaging is a reality. We extend shelf life, we protect the quality, taste, yield, and of course, if a consumer, all of us were consumers, if we buy something that is not as it best, that will not be a repetition ever again. So it's important for business, right, to have something that delivers a consistent food safe product. So for what concerns, and I'm going to try to answer a little bit about the plant-based as well. The most important thing is to reduce food waste and to nourish society. I think this is extremely important. So there is room for all types of food as long as it delivers functionality to the humans, right? So plant-based, yes. I mean, there's going to be a big opportunity for plant-based everywhere, as long as they deliver the nourishment to society. And as far as I understand, they are having a fantastic storytelling, right? They have some key messages that are getting into flexitarians, and there are parts of Europe where they are packaging these products in very modern and sustainable packaging systems. So I really believe the growth opportunities of this category is massive. And what about in seafood? What about in the rest of convenience meal? Well, of course, where do you want to position your product? Do you want to be just a protein, or you want to be a meal, the category development, the fulfillment of new moments of consumption, the convenience, all of this is opportunities. I think that with the right packaging, it could be a big growth for the whole supply chain. So is there going to be opportunities for packaging to improve growth in food in general in Europe? For sure, I believe so.
Indeed. Anyone else wants to develop on Gonzalo's reply as well? Okay. Thank you, Gonzalo. Indeed. There's another question popping up here from Jonas Lazaro, from Manager of Food Policy, Science and R&D of Food Drink Europe. How the EAT food strategy for innovation can support further small and medium enterprises in food industry, mainly the ones suffering the COVID-19 pandemic, like for example, the one serving HoReCa. Yes, I think Begonia would probably like to answer to this one.
Yeah, I would like to answer. Mentioning one of the trends that we have seen, all of us, digitalization and traceability. Some of the data that we have recovered says that in these few months, the digitalization in the food sector has make it what they were planned to do in 2 years. At least. So that was one of the things that we heard. One of the things that will be available for mainly small and medium enterprises, as Jonas is saying, is that, for example, we are 3 of our kicks, EIT Food, EIT Manufacturing, and EIT Digital. We are working on having available several test beds for digitalization in Europe that will be available by middle end of next year, and that they will be ready to make any kind of it will be like platforms where you can try the different sensors and possibilities to digitalize and make traceability in the products that are handled by the SMEs. So this is one of the examples that it will be available across Europe for next year. Another thing is, of course, health and healthy products and nutrition will be still is a focus area, very popular and very important for EIT Food, and that will be an increase clearly next year, we think. And another thing that we are doing, we are launching today, by the way, a new call for sustainable aquaculture innovative projects. So I'm doing the marketing because Jonas has allowed me to do on this area. We thought that EIT Food has to make an effort on the aquaculture area and help this sector. So we are very proud announcing that there is a new call opening today for the next months for sustainable aquaculture products.
Thank you, Begonia. It was a good moment for indeed, and at the same time replying to this important question. Then there's another one, which is actually from, I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing badly the names, I do my best. Lucina Lekavska Antrinopoulos, senior researcher from Institute of Communication and Computer Systems. The question goes like this. It is mentioned in the study that consumers are turning towards locally produced foods. Was the consumers' reasoning behind this trend studied? So I think this really goes to Klaus, this question.
Yeah, and this particular study, the reasoning behind that trend was not studied. If we apply what we generally know about the determinants of the demand for local food to this specific case, then the most likely interpretation is that there are two factors. One is it's part of the general trend towards more focus on sustainability that we have already mentioned, but there is most likely also an aspect that many people want to support their local suppliers, because there has been a lot of social discourse on how especially smaller companies have been affected by the pandemic, are struggling for their survival. And I'm sure there is also an aspect here of consumers and households trying to support the local actors and local suppliers.
Okay, yeah, excellent. We have another question here from our dear friend Rudolf from Siemens, and it is like he's building up on the question of Lucina. So, will food supply chains change in general after the experience of COVID-19? Maybe Gonzalo, you might like to, develop on this one.
Yes, please. Thank you. I believe, especially in the food supply chain, in the fish sector supply chain, there's going to be, as I mentioned before, a closeness, a strengthening position in the supply chain, closer to raw material. Okay, I think trust, consistency, quality, is and to get that strength of the raw material is going to be critical. So some stakeholders in that supply chain will try to get to that position first, right? And then it's a matter of who's more agile and who has more leverage in order to strengthen its position in the supply chain. So why? Because of data, information, in order to predict any disturbances that could happen in the future. So the closest that you are to the raw material, the closest that you are to the historical, to that data is going to be very, very important. And of course, that's upstream the supply chain, and obviously downstream the supply chain as well. So collaborations are going to be extremely important. Just to give you one example on sustainability of packaging, for example, okay? So what happened? Everything is accelerating towards circularity, right? We have a pledge. We have a pledge to deliver by 2025. But why to wait to 2025 if we already feel strong enough to deliver something by now, right? That gives you position in the supply chain. Strengthen your position in the supply chain. So, for example, in the UK market, with different partners, because we believe that the future, more than ever, is about a strong collaboration, okay, with different people that have the expertise that you may not have, but they complement perfectly a supply chain for a particular delivery. So if we are going all towards circularity, right, we approach a processor, a retailer, and two other partners in the supply chain in order to prove the recyclability, the total circularity of a specific flexible packaging structure. So we didn't have all the capacity, but our partners did, right? So by talking with a retailer that collected the post-consumer packaging, another major player in Europe, Plastic Energy, transformed that used packaging, flexible packaging into oil. That oil was transformed by another major player with the knowledge into virgin resin. Okay, and that virgin resin came back to us to be transformed again into a plastic that will pack food. So it was proven something that before was unseen. The proven true circularity of a flexible packaging. So what I believe that is going to happen in the future, after all this unprecedented situation, is very strong strengthening position in the supply chain, getting closer to raw materials and strong partnerships in order to deliver what society needs.
Yes, that was a very, very fundamental and large answer. Anyone else? Klaus, do you want to add something on this one? Or Julia maybe, or Begonia? I mean, we have only about 5 minutes left, so this is a last chance bring in a little bit your own replies to these questions still.
Yeah, I mean, building just a little bit on what Gonzalo said, because to the extent that we have this strong emphasis on health and sustainability, it will also mean there is a strong emphasis on information streams. Because how can you choose a healthy and sustainable alternative if you don't know it's healthy and sustainable? So information is important. It's a question of trust, as Gonzalo said. It's easier to establish in short supply chains. But we can also do it in global supply chains if we have the right technology in terms of information streams, the blockchain thing, and all these things that can play a role here. So in that sense, I think there will clearly be an impact on food supply chains in the future as part of the transition.
Okay, very good.
Maybe just one comment from myself. What I would think would happen in the not only in the food supply chain but in any supply chain is that those disturbances that we have seen probably would put more pressure on the risk analysis with regard to the supply chains that they are currently present. And it doesn't mean that all of them will be already shortened, but rather the risk factor will be included in cost calculation, and therefore if the risk is too high, then it may be somehow shortened, even taking the higher cost on having suppliers somewhere closer, because that's why we have in fact those long supply chains, because of the cost, because it was for many reasons, but mostly for the cost driven. So if we evaluate the risk right now behind it, then it may change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good.
From my side, I only wanted to remind perhaps some takeaways from the food companies, food industry or sector, that we all have said something like be agile and act fast, invest in digital capabilities and direct-to-consumer solutions, create new consumer experiences, and for me as well, another issue is think about how the business impact the environment and act accordingly, because that giving purpose of the core of your business is important. So that is what I wanted to add.
Well, thank you, Begonia, and thank you all the panelists. And I think this all goes back to the fact that our consumers today are in a way really well educated, and there's a lot of information that is available. Then, of course, the big challenge that there is that the consumer behavior, and this is how I have learned from Klaus, of course, that is extremely unpredictable. Nevertheless, we have seen here now those trends that are very clear, that are very well established. And this COVID crisis is really opening these opportunities to accelerate the innovation, but it's now, and it is together with the understanding the consumer behavior and understanding the consumer needs, right? Klaus, you confirm. And so this is really where we need to focus and go like hand in hand with the consumers. I see I have 2 minutes left, and again, many thanks for the panelists for really insightful discussion and sharing your expertise and ideas, and also the being positive of the future opportunities. I think this is also really important. And I would like to now invite you all to navigate back to the main stage for the closing remarks from Andy Zinga, CEO of EIT Food. And from my behalf as well, thank you very much for following this session, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.